Thrown like trash. The junkyard was loud. Metal parts clanged. Sparks flew from broken machines. Smoke filled the air. But no one noticed the small figure lying in the corner, curled up, shaking, and dirty. She was not a machine. She was a girl, an alien girl. Her skin was pale silver, her arms thin like wires, and her eyes, large and glowing blue, stared at nothing. Her body was covered in cuts, her clothes were torn, and around her neck was a tag, defective, not for use. Some traders laughed as they passed her. One kicked a can at her, another threw a bone. "She can't speak," said one alien. "She's no good. Throw her in the grinder." "No," said another. "Let's try to sell her. Even junk has a price." So they placed her on a low platform near the metal scraps. They put a sign above her. 1 credit, as is people passed by. No one stopped, until a man did. He wore dusty boots, torn gloves, and an old human mechanic's jacket. His name was Tom. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. Grease stained his face and his eyes were half shut. Until he saw her. He didn't speak. He just stood there, looking at her. She didn't move. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. But her eyes slowly turned and met his. And for 1 second, just 1 second, hope appeared in them. Tom walked closer. "Is this a child?" he asked. "No." The trader laughed. "Just a broken model. Defective. Not real life." Tom knelt beside her. She smelled like smoke and oil. Her body was cold. "She's alive." "So what?" The trader shrugged. "Nobody wants her. 1 credit or we melt her." Tom reached into his pocket. He pulled out a single coin. That was all he had. He looked down at the girl again. Her eyes were still on him. No fear, no hate, just a quiet question. "Will you leave too?" He placed the coin on the table. The trader laughed. "Sold. You just bought yourself trash, human." Tom didn't answer. He gently picked her up in his arms. She was light, too light. Bones, metal, and skin, that's all. She didn't resist. She just rested her head on his chest. For the first time in her short life, someone had held her. As Tom walked away, the trader shouted behind him, "You'll be sorry, human. That thing's cursed." But Tom didn't care. He walked past rows of broken ships, past burning barrels and laughing crowds. He didn't stop until he reached his small transport cart parked near the edge of the junkyard. He placed her gently in the back seat, covered her with a blanket, closed the door. Then he sat in the driver's seat and sighed. What did I just do? The engine started, and they drove off into the desert night. The ride was quiet. The only sound was the wind. After some time, Tom looked back. She was still awake, watching him. "You okay?" he asked. No reply. He reached for a small water bottle and held it out. "You thirsty?" She blinked. Slowly, she took it. Her hands were shaking. She spilled a little, but she drank. Then, she whispered, "Why?" Tom blinked. "What?" "Why?" "Save me," she asked. Her voice was soft and broken, like it hadn't been used in years. Tom looked ahead at the road. Quiet, for a moment, 'cause no one else did. She didn't answer, but she held the bottle tight, as if it was the first thing that ever belonged to her. Tom's house was more like a workshop. Metal parts were everywhere, half-built machines, wires, tools. It smelled like oil and fire. He carried her inside and placed her on an old soft bench. He gave her food. She didn't eat much, just stared at him while chewing slowly. Then he noticed something. Her back, under her torn shirt, was not normal. Metal plates, screws, and strange glowing lines that pulsed like veins. He leaned closer. "You're not just any alien, are you?" She turned her head away, almost like she was ashamed. Tom didn't push her. "You can stay here tonight. he said. "I'll figure things out tomorrow." He placed a blanket over her, turned off the lights, sat at his workbench, and watched the stars through the dusty window. She lay still under the blanket, but her eyes stayed open. For the first time in her life, she was not afraid to fall asleep, because this time someone had saved her. Not for money. Not for use, but just to save her. The desert wind howled through the night as Tom stood outside his workshop staring up at the stars. He should have gone to bed. His body was tired, aching from long hours of machine work and old injuries. But something inside him wouldn't rest. Inside the workshop, on the padded bench near his tools, the alien girl lay asleep under a faded blanket. Her breathing was light, her small body barely making a dent in the cushions. She looked peaceful, but Tom knew better. He had seen her eyes that didn't belong to a machine or weapon. Those eyes belonged to someone who had been thrown away again and again, someone who had stopped believing in kindness. And still she asked, why? Tom didn't have a real answer. In the junkyard, the deal had felt strange. Too easy. 1 credit. And she was his? The traders didn't even haggle. They laughed like it was a joke. Tom wasn't sure if he had bought a girl, saved a life, or walked into a trap. Either way, he had made the deal. Morning came slowly. The workshop smelled of oil and metal. Tom made a simple breakfast, reheated bread and warm synth milk. When he placed the tray near her, she opened her eyes, blinking softly. "You need to eat," he said. She looked at the food, then at him. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice still quiet and unsure. "Tom," he replied. "What about you?" She paused. Then, slowly, "I don't know." Tom sat beside her, careful not to startle her. "You don't remember?" She shook her head. "Do you remember anything? Where you came from? Who made you?" Silence. Tom sighed. "All right, we'll take it slow." After breakfast, Tom began cleaning up the workshop. The girl, he started calling her Nova in his mind, watched him closely. Every sound made her flinch. Every tool he picked up made her tense. She didn't trust him. Not yet. But she stayed. Hours passed. The sun rose higher. Then, while adjusting a gearbox, Tom noticed Nova staring at her own hand. She turned it slowly, studying her fingers like they were new to her. One of the fingers clicked open, revealing a small glowing chip inside. Tom rushed to her. "Wait, don't touch that." She looked at him, confused. "Why?" He carefully examined the chip. It had a tiny blinking red light. "I think this is a tracker," he said slowly. "They were watching you. Maybe they still are." Nova's face turned pale. "They'll come back." Tom felt a chill. "Let's hope not, but if they do, they'll have to go through me first." Later that day, Tom took Nova outside to see the desert. His workshop sat on the edge of a rocky plain, surrounded by silence and sky. Nova stepped out carefully, as if the ground might vanish. She lifted her face to the sun and closed her eyes. "You like the warmth?" Tom asked. She nodded. "It doesn't hurt." Tom smiled. "Good. You're safe here." That's when he saw it, something flickering in her eye. A small light like a scanner lens blinking once before disappearing. She was more than a girl. She was part machine, and probably not by choice. Back inside, Tom ran a scan on her with his repair tools. The data shocked him. Inside her were dozens of coded barriers, locked programs, and warning files marked experimental use only and do not activate. She wasn't just discarded. She had been built, tested, and left unfinished. Who would do this to a child? Tom whispered. Nova sat quietly watching his face. "Am I broken?" she asked. Tom looked at her, truly looked at her. "No. You're incomplete, but not broken." She stared at him for a long moment. Then with great courage she asked, Can I be fixed? Tom placed a hand gently on her shoulder. We'll try. Together. But deep inside, he knew this wasn't just a fix-it job. There was a reason she had been sold for 1 credit. A reason the traders didn't care. And a reason someone might come back. As the sun set, Nova sat beside him on the floor watching him work. She said nothing, but every now and then she'd ask little questions. What's that tool? What does it do? Why does fire hurt metal? Tom answered them all patiently, even when her questions didn't make sense. It wasn't just curiosity. It was learning, rebuilding. Later that night, as Tom turned off the lights, Nova whispered something. Tom, yeah? Thank you for not leaving me. He didn't answer. He just smiled in the dark. The deal might have confused others, but to Nova, it was the first time she was ever chosen. And to Tom, it no longer felt like he had saved her. It felt like she had saved him. The days passed slowly inside Tom's desert workshop. The air smelled of dust and old oil, and the silence was often broken by the sharp clink of tools and the quiet hum of power cells. But inside that silence, something began to grow. Trust. Nova no longer flinched when Tom walked close. She no longer stared at her hands like they were strangers. She now helped clean the table, picked up screws, and even tried to fit metal parts together. Her hands were still shaky, but Tom could see the change. He didn't ask questions too quickly. He didn't force her to remember. But one morning, while repairing a damaged cooling unit, Tom noticed her staring at the far end of the shed, a small locked door, rusted from years of heat. You want to see what's in there? Tom asked. Nova nodded. What's inside? An old storage room. I don't use it anymore. Hasn't been opened in years. She looked at him with calm, curious eyes. Can we open it? Tom smiled. Sure. He grabbed the old key from a shelf and unlocked the heavy door. It creaked open slowly, revealing dust-covered shelves, broken drones, and piles of metal parts no longer in use. Nova stepped in slowly, her eyes wide. But then she stopped. In the corner, covered with a tarp, was something different. Something not made of rusted iron or leftover bolts. It was another body. Tom froze when he saw it too. It looked like a girl, but not quite. It was metallic, smooth, with half a face missing and wires exposed like veins. The body was incomplete, lifeless and strange. Nova stepped closer. Her fingers gently brushed the surface of the shell. She looks like me, she whispered. Tom nodded slowly. That's because she is. Nova turned. What do you mean? Tom sighed. Years ago, I was hired to work on an experimental prototype, a synthetic life form. I didn't know the full truth back then, only that it was dangerous, and the creators gave up on it. Nova's eyes didn't blink. You built her? No. I just repaired her parts. They said she was unstable. Then they shut the whole project down. I kept the body out of curiosity. Maybe guilt. Nova stared at the half-finished figure, her reflection shining faintly on the dull silver skin. Her voice trembled. Is that what I am? A project? Tom didn't answer immediately. I don't know, he said, but someone made you, someone powerful, and they didn't want you anymore. She backed away from the shell, her hands shaking. Then I shouldn't be here. I'm a mistake. Tom stepped forward quickly. No, that's not true. You said I'm incomplete, she whispered. Yes, but incomplete doesn't mean worthless. It means you still have a future. Nova lowered her head. What if they come back for me? Tom looked at the body on the floor again. Something about it felt wrong. He scanned it with his handheld tool. Inside was something new. A glowing, blue shard embedded in the chest. What's that? Nova asked. Tom pulled the shard out carefully. It hummed in his hand. It's a memory core, he said. Locked. He connected it to his scanner. A series of files appeared, blurred, encrypted, but one video flashed through. A lab, a screaming child, scientists arguing, and then a name. Project EVA. Experimental Vessel Alpha. Tom's hand shook. Nova. I think that's you. She stared at him, silent. They tried to make the perfect hybrid, Tom continued, his voice heavy. Part alien, part machine, fast, strong, smart. But something went wrong. You didn't follow orders, you showed feelings. Nova whispered. So they threw me away. Tom's heart ached. Because you were too human. They sat in silence, for a long time. Outside, the desert wind blew softly against the tin walls. Then Nova did something unexpected. She stood up straight, walked to the table, and picked up a wrench. Can you teach me to fix things? She asked. Tom blinked. Why? Because if they come for me, she said quietly, I want to fight back. Not with fear, but with strength. Like you. Tom smiled, proud and sad. All right, let's start with the basics. All day, they worked side by side. Nova learned to tighten bolts and strip wires, patch batteries. Her hands were unsure, but her mind was fast. She asked sharp questions, understood quickly, and began to smile. That night, after dinner, Nova stood at the window. Tom? Yeah? Am I really not broken? Tom walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. You're not broken, Nova. You were just made by the wrong people. But you're in the right place now. She turned her head slowly. Then maybe I can become something better. You already are. As the stars appeared in the sky, Nova closed her eyes, not to shut the world out, but to feel it. For the first time, the shed didn't feel like a prison. It felt like home. The next morning came with silence. No alarms, no shouting, just the soft desert wind brushing against the workshop walls. Inside, the girl known as Nova sat by a half-built generator, holding a small tool in her hand. She didn't know the name of the tool, but she liked how it felt. Smooth, balanced, useful. Tom sat across from her, drinking from a rusty mug. His face was tired, eyes heavy but calm. He'd worked late into the night, thinking, fixing, wondering. What kind of man brings home a girl built to be a weapon? What kind of man keeps her safe? And why? Did it feel so right? Nova looked up at him and spoke softly. What's this called again? Tom raised an eyebrow. That's a torque spanner. She nodded, repeating it in her mind. Torque spanner. Tom smiled. You're getting better. Nova gave a small smile too, then glanced at the metal parts scattered across the floor. Can I try fixing the panel now? Sure, Tom said, standing up. But be careful with the wires. Blue is power, red is sensor. Cross them and the whole board fries. I remember, she said quickly. As she bent down to work, Tom watched her quietly. Just a few days ago, she had barely spoken a word. Now she asked questions, practiced tools, even tried to joke once, clumsy but sweet. He didn't expect this much progress. But it was her eyes that told the real story. They no longer looked empty. They looked alive. Hours passed, and Nova completed her task. The power grid hummed softly, perfect connection. Tom clapped slowly. Not bad, Nova grinned faintly. I didn't burn anything this time. Nope, that's improvement. Then she stood up and walked toward him with purpose. Her eyes serious, her voice clear. Tom, I want a name. Tom blinked. You mean you don't want to be called Nova? She shook her head. That's just what you thought. I want to name myself. Tom nodded. All right, did you choose one? She looked down at her hand. The same hand that once held a tracker, the hand that once shook with fear. Ina, she said. Tom tilted his head. Why Ina? It's short, she said simply, and sounds new, like me. Tom gave a warm smile. Then Ina it is. She stood taller, like the name made her. But just as peace settled over them, a noise outside broke it. A soft hum, strange and low. Not desert wind. Not machines. It was a drone. Tom moved fast, peeking out through the cracked window. A black surveillance drone hovered near the hills, scanning the area. Its red light blinked. Then it turned and vanished into the sky. Tom cursed under his breath. Ina's face went pale. They found me. Tom turned to her. Maybe not yet, but they're looking. Will they take me back? Tom gritted his teeth. Not while I'm breathing. That night, Tom pulled out old parts from a locked trunk. Cloaking nets, EMP, triggers, signal blockers, stuff he hadn't touched in years, not since he left the war zones. Ina watched him, quiet. Were you a soldier? She asked. Tom paused. Something like that. Did you ever kill anyone? He looked at her carefully. Yes. She didn't flinch. Would you kill again? Tom stared down at the blaster in his hands, then back at her. If it meant keeping you safe, yes. Ina nodded once. No more questions. Later, while Tom set traps around the outer fence, Ina sat inside holding the memory core they had recovered from the broken body. She connected it to a small interface and watched the old video again. She saw the lab. The men in white. The other versions of her screaming, breaking, failing. And she saw herself. Not broken, not dangerous, just scared. A girl, not a weapon. Tom returned as the sun dipped low. His shirt was dirty, hands scratched, but his eyes were focused. We've got protection now, he said. Ina looked at him. You don't have to do all this. Tom gave a tired smile. Yes, I do. But why? She whispered. You don't even know who I am. Tom stepped forward, kneeling in front of her. I don't need to know who you were. I see who you are now, and that's enough. Her hands tightened around the memory core. I remember something. Tom sat beside her. Tell me. I was in a cold room. There were lights, wires, and I was crying. But no one listened. They just watched. She shook her head, voice trembling. I screamed for them to stop. But they didn't. I didn't want to be strong. I just wanted to be free. Tom placed a hand on her back. You are free now. Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. She looked out the window at the stars. I want to live, Tom, not just survive. I want to build, fix, learn, feel. Tom nodded. Then you will. She smiled. A real smile this time. And then softly, clearly, she said the words she had never dared speak before. I'm not afraid anymore. Tom had seen many strange things in his life. Alien technology, outlaw weaponry, creatures that didn't bleed. But nothing had ever made his hands shake like what he saw inside Ina. That morning, he was working on a routine scan of her inner circuits. She had been feeling weak, her steps slow, her voice a bit softer than usual. Tom thought maybe one of her internal energy lines had come loose or shorted, but what he found under her chest panel was something else entirely. Not just wires, not just gears, a core. It pulsed slowly, deep red. Not the cool blue of power cells. Red meant heat. Red meant danger. Tom leaned in, carefully connected a reader device, and the screen flashed a warning. Primary failsafe detonator. Active. Countdown triggered. His breath caught. He looked at Ina, calmly sitting across the room, drawing shapes in the sand on the floor. He pulled the scan away before she noticed the panic on his face. Ina smiled and held up a wrench. Look, I fixed the battery port. Tom tried to smile back. That's great, kid, you're learning fast. But inside, his heart thundered. He knew now someone had made her to self-destruct. Not at random, but under specific orders. A remote signal, a command word, or worse, an internal timer that could activate once she started healing, learning, growing. He stepped outside, the desert wind hot on his face, and tried to think. His mind raced through old training, detonation failsafes, hidden triggers, biological locks. But this wasn't military grade. It was something worse. Corporate. Private. Hidden. She wasn't just made to fight. She was made to end herself if she became wrong. Inside the shed, Ina began to hum, a small song she didn't remember learning. It was soft, sweet, and sad. It sounded like hope, but mixed with sorrow. Tom walked back in. Ina, he said gently, I want to run another test, just to be sure everything's working right. She looked at him, blinking. Did I break something? No. I just want to check. She nodded and lay down on the table, trusting him, trusting fully. Tom connected the reader again and began looking deeper. The core wasn't old. It was recently activated. Something must have triggered it. Maybe when she opened her memory core. Maybe when she remembered pain. Maybe just when she felt too much. Her body was reacting like she was a threat to herself. He scanned deeper, fingers moving fast, face tight with focus. And then, buried in the code, he saw it. A shutdown line. Not physical, but emotional. A hidden protocol that said, if the subject begins to express independence, emotion, or attachment, activate failsafe core. He stared at the line of code. Someone had written it like a command. Emotion equals failure. His chest tightened. Tom? Ina asked softly. He looked at her. Yeah? You're shaking. He tried to hide it. Just tired. No, she said quietly, sitting up. You're scared. He didn't lie. Not to her. Yes. I found something. In you. Something that could hurt you. Maybe worse. Her eyes lowered. Like a bomb? Tom nodded. She didn't move. Didn't scream. She only asked one thing. Can you remove it? He sighed. I don't know, but I'll try. I'll try everything. She looked at him for a long time. If you can't, promise me something. What? Don't let it hurt anyone else. Tom stared at her. No, I'm not giving up on you. It's not giving up, she whispered. It's just choosing what matters. Tom turned and grabbed his gear. What matters right now is saving you. He spent the next 6 hours trying to find a way to disarm the core. Code blockers, thermal dampeners, magnetic stabilizers. Ina stayed still, silent, not even blinking as he worked on the heart that had been turned against her. She wasn't afraid of pain. She was afraid of hurting him. But no matter what Tom tried, the core wouldn't shut down. It had a secondary lock, voice-coded. He stared at the input field. A final line of code blinked. Voice. Key required to disarm, original creator only. Tom sat back, breathing hard. I need the voice of the person who made you, he muttered. Ina looked at him. Can we find them? Tom shook his head. Maybe, but it'll take time, and I don't know how much you have left. Silence filled the shed again. Then Ina did something unexpected. She reached over and placed her hand over his. I'm not scared, she said. Tom looked at her, eyes full of fire and guilt. You should be. She smiled faintly. I used to be scared of everything, but now, I've felt what it's like to be wanted, to be useful, to be loved. Tom's voice cracked. You are loved. She squeezed his hand. Then let me stay like this, even if it's for one more day. He leaned his forehead against hers, closing his eyes. One more day. But I swear, Ina, it won't be the last. Outside, the desert sky turned deep orange. Inside, a girl built for destruction, smiled like a child who had finally found home. The night had just begun when the sky changed. It started as a distant hum, low, steady, unnatural. Tom was outside, checking the motion sensors when he heard it. He froze, his eyes scanning the dark sky over the hills. And then he saw them. 3 blinking lights moving in perfect triangle formation. Drones. Not civilian, Not local, military class. Silent, fast, watching. Tom rushed inside, shutting the door with a loud bang. Ina looked up from the workbench. She had been studying wire circuits, trying to focus, trying to forget the bomb inside her chest. But when she saw his face, she knew something was wrong. "They're here," Tom said simply. Her hands dropped the tool. "Them?" He nodded. "They found you." Ina stood slowly, her expression calm but her heart racing. "What do we do?" Tom moved fast. "We hide you. Deep, behind the workshop wall. I've got a shielded compartment. Signal-proof. They won't detect you." Ina didn't move. "And you? I'll talk to them." "No," she said sharply. "They'll take you, or kill you." Tom gave a tired smile. "I've faced worse. I'm not letting them take you. Not after everything." She wanted to argue, but time was short. He led her to the back wall, pulled aside a dusty metal shelf, and opened a false panel. Inside was a small space, barely enough for her to sit. He tossed in a power pack, a water flask, and a small light. "Stay quiet, no matter what you hear." Ina hesitated, then reached out and grabbed his sleeve. "Promise me one thing." "What?" "If they take me, don't come after me alone." He placed a hand on her head. "I won't let them take you at all." The moment she slipped behind the wall, Tom sealed it shut. The hum grew louder. Then suddenly, it stopped. A knock came at the door, soft but chilling. Not a knock of politeness, but one of authority. Tom opened the door slowly. Standing outside were, two figures, not robots, not aliens, humans, but not like him. These men wore clean black coats, no dust, no dirt, no kindness. Their eyes scanned every inch of him. "Tom Harlan," one said. "Mechanic, ex-combat engineer, desert registered." Tom nodded slowly. "That's me." The man didn't smile. "We're looking for something that went missing. A stolen prototype, Project EVA." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Never heard of it." The second man stepped forward, holding a data pad. "Surveillance from junk sector shows you purchasing a unit labeled defective. We believe it was the missing asset. Highly dangerous." "Defective?" Tom said, pretending to think. "Oh, that. Looked more like a damaged helper bot. Junk." "I scrapped it." The first man narrowed his eyes. "Scrapped?" Tom nodded. "Didn't even work, too many faults." There was silence. Then the man stepped closer. "We can scan the premises. Make sure." Tom didn't move. "You got a warrant?" The man's lips thinned. "This is Sector 9. We don't need one." Tom didn't blink. "Then I suggest you leave before this becomes a different kind of visit." The men stared at him for a long moment. Tom didn't back down. He knew how this game worked. If he showed weakness, they'd tear the whole place apart. Finally, the second man looked to the sky. "We'll return. With authority." Tom nodded. "Once. You do that." Without another word, the two turned and walked away. Within minutes, their craft lifted and vanished into the clouds. Tom stood still until he could no longer hear the hum. Then he turned and rushed back inside. He opened the panel. Ina was curled inside, eyes wide. "They were human," she whispered. "Why?" Tom helped her out. "Not normal humans, black site agents, government or private military. You were made by someone with power." She hugged herself. "I'm not safe anymore." Tom shook his head. "No, you're not. And that means we move tonight." "Move where?" "There's an old mining town past the canyons," he said. "Dead zone, no signals, no scans. If we make it there, we buy time." Ina didn't hesitate. "Then let's go." Tom packed fast. Food, tools, signal jammers. He helped Ina into his old transport rig, a dusty crawler with patched tires and a busted front screen. As they drove under the moonlight, Ina looked out at the open land. "Tom?" she said softly. "Yeah?" "Why are humans chasing me? Why would they do this to their own kind?" Tom gripped the wheel tighter. "You're not their kind, Ina. You were built, not born. And to people like them, that means they own you. But I feel, she said. I cry. I dream. Tom nodded. I know. That's why they're afraid of you. She leaned back, watching. The stars blur by, they'll come again. They will, Tom said. But next time, we'll be ready. She looked at him. No longer the scared girl from the junkyard, but someone stronger, someone hunted, but not helpless. The desert wind howled louder now, not from nature, but from war. The small mining town that Tom had spoken of was nothing more than scattered metal huts and forgotten machines, half buried in sand. But it had one thing he needed. Silence. No signals, no scans. It was off the grid, and for 2 nights that silence was their safety. Tom and Ina slept in shifts, hiding the crawler behind old ore piles. She practiced rewiring old tech while he set up perimeter alerts with motion wires and sound spikes. They didn't talk much, but they didn't need to. Every glance between them now carried meaning. They had passed the point of being strangers. She was no longer a project to him, and he was no longer a rescuer to her. They were family now. But peace never stays long when you're running from those who believe they own you. On the 3rd night, Ina woke up gasping. Her chest burned like fire and her vision blurred. Tom rushed to her side, feeling the pulse of heat coming from under her skin. It's the core, she whispered, holding her chest. It's speeding up. Tom scanned her quickly. The failsafe had entered final stage. The countdown wasn't hours anymore, it was minutes, and the shutdown command was still locked, hidden behind a voice code they didn't have. We need to get it out, she whispered, sweat rolling down her silver skin. Please, Tom. I don't want to hurt you. Tom stared at her and said, nothing. Then without another word, he stood up, yanked the tarp off a dusty table and began preparing. No anesthetic, he muttered. No room for mistakes. You're going to cut it out, she asked. I'm going to try, he said. Unless you'd rather explode? She gave a broken laugh. Do it. Tom sterilized the tools with heat, then helped her lie down. Her breathing was uneven, but her eyes were calm. I'm scared, she whispered. Tom placed his hand on hers. I'm terrified. She smiled. Then the slicing began. The moment the blade touched her chest panel, a shockwave of heat burst through the room. The failsafe core began resisting, wires flexing, systems pulsing. It didn't want to be removed. It had been designed to survive extraction, but Tom had spent his life fixing the impossible. His hands moved fast, his breath steady. Ina bit her lip to stop from screaming. Sparks flew. Blood mixed with fluid. And finally, his fingers, wrapped around a sphere no larger than a coin, pulsing red. The core, still alive, still counting. Tom held it up. Done. Ina sat up with a gasp, pain flooding through her, but she didn't explode. Her heart still beat, and for the first time since she could remember, her body was her own. But their victory didn't last long. Outside, the sky roared. Dropships. Tom looked out the broken window. They're here. Black-cloaked soldiers dropped. From above, armed, cold, moving like machines. One spoke into a comm device. Target confirmed. Execute capture. Kill the man. Tom locked eyes with Ina. I'll hold them. No. She tried to stand. Listen to me. You've got a chance now. You're free. Don't waste it. He handed her a small chip. What's this? She asked. The backup. Your code, your memories, everything. You lose this, they win. She looked at it. Then at him. I'm not leaving you. Tom smiled. Too bad. He turned, grabbed an old plasma cutter and rushed out the door. Ina watched him disappear into smoke and sand. The fight was loud. The cutter's beam lit the night. Soldiers screamed. Shots echoed across metal and dust. Ina clutched the chip, heart pounding. Then she heard it. Tom's voice shouting, and then silence. She ran, through fire, through smoke. She found him, on his knees, held by two black-armored soldiers. Blood dripped from his shoulder. "Stop,"
she cried. One of the men looked at her and raised a shock lance, but before he struck, she stepped forward and spoke with a voice that wasn't hers alone. It was everything she had become. "You said I was just a tool, just code. But I'm more. I choose who I am. I choose my life."
The soldier hesitated. Ina pulled the core from her pocket, the same one Tom removed, and crushed it under her foot. "This is what you made me." The soldier stepped back, unsure. She held out her hand. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." Something shifted in the air, and then from behind came Tom's voice. "You hurt her." He stood again, bleeding but alive. Holding the shock lance now, together they stood side by side, and the soldiers left. They didn't speak, didn't fire, they just turned and vanished back into the smoke. Later, as dawn rose over the desert, Tom and Ina sat by the crawler. "You saved me," he said quietly. Ina leaned on his shoulder. "You gave me something first." "What's that?" She smiled. "A reason to live." He looked at her, and in that moment he knew. She wasn't just worth saving. She was worth more than anything.